figure it out, but we're going to persevere. We're going to get going anyway. All right, so let's get into the meat of what we want to talk about tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about O.P.P, other people's problems. That's our favorite thing to talk about, right? If you're a fan of reality TV, you love other people's problems because it makes you feel better about yours, right? You watch those things and you say, man, I'm just not that screwed up. Thank God, that I'm, that's why we watch it, right? But that's not really what we're talking about in the context of the Legal Shield membership plan. Other people's problems for our purposes tonight are going to be about restrictions on using the Legal Shield membership for advice concerning other people's problems. It's a little bit of a slippery topic for us to talk about, but it's one that we deal with all the time. And it's really one of the ones that is more difficult for us to help members understand whenever they call in on an issue that is somebody else's problem. So the learning objectives that we have for tonight are going to be the who's and the what's of the membership as it relates to our particular topic. We're not going to go through the whole membership. We'll talk about who is entitled to use the membership, and we'll talk about what can the membership be used for. These seem like very basic concepts, but we run into this issue of other people's problems all the time. So these are the ways we're going to explain that. So let's talk a little bit about the who's of the membership. And this is all set forth in basically every plan that Legal Shield publishes. It's going to talk about who the covered person is, who is entitled to use the membership benefits. So number one, of course, is the member, the named member, the person that's paying for the membership, the person whose name is on the membership. And then we also have the member's spouse or domestic partner, right? That person is also entitled to use the membership. The benefits flow to that person. Never married dependents, natural children or adopted children under the age of 26 years who are residents of the member's household or they're full-time students, at a college. Those folks are also entitled to use the membership and the benefits of the membership flow to them. Children under 18 years of age for whom the member or their spouse is a legal guardian. Again, under 18 years of age, not kids that are people that are older, right, than 18 years that are covered under guardianship. And then dependents who are special needs children, right? Basically special needs children in various capacities are going to be entitled to have the benefits regardless of age, right, under the membership. So these are the who's, right? This is the who. Who is the benefit? Who is the membership entitled, or who is the membership designed to benefit, right? It's their legal problems that the membership is designed to benefit. So let's talk about the what's of the membership. So what's included, these folks, what can they use it for, right? What do the covered people that are entitled to use the membership, what can they use it for? Well, very simply, although it's a complicated thing to talk about, personal legal issue of a covered person. So those go hand in hand. It has to be a personal legal issue of a covered person. So remember that there's two parts to it. What's not included are other people's legal issues. And we're going to give you lots of examples of how that comes into play at the point of service. When somebody calls us and say, I've got this question about this thing, how that comes about. So let's talk a little bit about what a personal legal issue is. How do we even define that, right? Here are a couple of different ways that we can think about that. First is that the person who's calling, the covered person, right? The member, the spouse, covered child, those folks who can use the membership. The person themselves have suffered some type of actual harm, right? Actual harm. I got hit by the car. I am getting sued, right? I got cheated out of a contract. Me personally got cheated out of this contract. So it has to be an issue that's personal to them where they suffered some type of an actual harm. That's one example of, or one way to define a personal legal issue. Not the only way, but just one. And Karen and Noemi, jump in here anywhere you want along the way, by all means. Personal legal issue also involves a legally protected interest of the person directly, right? So they have a personal interest in whatever the problem is. They have signed the lease and the landlord is doing something that is breaching their rights under the lease. They have a legally protected interest in whatever that matter is. It applies to them directly. They have a stake in it. They have a dog in the horse in the race, so to speak, kind of a thing. Also, the issue or perceived harm, whatever it is that they're calling about, is a concrete thing that's particularized related to the covered person. So sometimes folks might call us to say, I've got a problem with, and I don't mean this to be a political or whatever, mail in ballots, right? That isn't really an issue that is necessarily particularized to them. It's a general issue, right? It's more of a general issue. And we have questions that arise about things like that aren't really a particular issue to the member. Now, those we'll probably talk to them about no matter what, but that's the type of a thing that sometimes folks call us in. Not that often, but it does come up. Does come up. Karen or Noemi, can you think of other examples of something like that that's more of a general type of a thing? Maybe some people have like there are some folks who have this like sovereign citizen type issue when it comes to they don't feel like they can be taxed, right?
Yes,
We
that's a big
see
one
that come
too.
up, right?
Yes.
Or I've had another one come up about, oh, I can't even remember the term of what it is, but it involves property that their property can't be subject to real estate tax, right? Karen, do you remember what that one is? I've seen it come up a couple times even this year. I don't know if she can unmute or not, but if you think
Karen,
about
you're
it,
muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. No, I don't recall specifically, but there is a lot of times when the individuals are talking about different matters regarding property and trying to find some types of exceptions that just don't exist, and trying to kind of create for themselves that they're like a something independent from the rest of the world, essentially.
yes, that's a good way of sort of capturing like the whole host of things. They fall under that sort of general category that I'm not part of society for all the things that I don't want to be part of society for, like paying income taxes, like paying property taxes, and these other types of things. Those are questions that do come up on occasion. And of course, as we're going through this stuff, anywhere along the way, feel free to pop something into the chat if you have a question or the Q&A. We will definitely answer those as we get to the end of the presentation. So here's another reason why we where other people's problems aren't covered by the membership, right? And this one is particular to attorneys, right? Because we could potentially be exposed to liability for malpractice claims by those other people, right? If a member is calling us about somebody else's problem, and we give advice and it doesn't go so well for that person, or it's relayed in the wrong way or whatever, somebody misunderstands it and they do something and it doesn't work out for them, they might seek to hold us responsible for whatever their perception is about the advice that we gave. Legal malpractice, they might want to raise a legal malpractice claim against us. And this type of a liability arises when that third party, meaning that person, that other person, right? Um, that other person is aggrieved, right? Of whatever the advice is that we gave. And it arises when the interests of the member who's calling us and that other person are very similar, right? So, for example, let's say, and I'm going to give you some examples, but let's just say that you called in and you are you're calling in about a piece of property that you co-own with somebody that's not a member, right? And you've received some kind of a notice from the municipality about some type of violation and you want advice about it, right? there is the possibility that the advice that we're giving you is going to apply to you, but it's also going to be applied to that other person who isn't a member, right? Just like you, because whatever action that you're going to take, and it probably take it on behalf of not only yourself, but all of the other people who own that property together. And that can give rise to potential third party liability from that other person if we gave you bad advice or you don't follow the advice we gave you, and something doesn't work out and they want to blame somebody for whatever the problems are that happen. So this is something that attorneys have to be wary of whenever a member is calling in about something that could also be, or in fact is, somebody else's problem. We may say we really can't give you advice about that because of this potential third party liability that might arise. That's something that's completely outside of the confines of how the membership contract is written. There may also, in those types of situations, be a potential conflict of interest, right? Because we don't know what else is going on with that other person who owns the property. You may be at odds with them, or there might be some claims that they have that we don't know anything about. And the advice that we give you that you act on is inconsistent with whatever that other person's interests are or claims are. And there could be a potential conflict of interest there too. So we kind of have to be thinking about those types of things as well whenever somebody is presenting us with an issue that could give rise to potential malpractice liability to that other person. So, Karen, do you have any comments on that at all, or am I covering that okay?
One thing I'll add is part of the problem also is that you may not necessarily get the full story from the other
Yeah.
party also. And if we're not consulting with that person, we can't follow up and with the questions that may be necessary to resolve that person's issue. So if you're only an interpretation of what you think the other person said, the advice in itself may not be accurate.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So there's potential conflicts there too. So okay. So let's talk about frequent types of OPP, other people's problems that people call us about, right? First one, the most obvious, is legal issues for family members who are not covered persons under the membership. So you call about a problem that your 28-year-old child is having. They're no longer covered under the plan, right? But you would like to give us advice that you could pass along to your child for what it is ever they need to do. My 28-year-old son just got arrested and I need some advice about whatever it is that this person does, or they've got a warrant out for their arrest and what should I tell them to do? What should they do? Right? That could very common type of a thing that could come up. People calling in for their parents' legal problems, right? Their parents aren't covered by the plan, but it's not unusual for somebody to call in and say, my mom is early stages of dementia and she's having these problems and I'm helping her out with them. How should I address this? She's having a problem with a contractor who won't come back to fix something up, or she got cheated, or whatever, right? Could be that my mom needs a power of attorney. What do we, can you prepare that for my mother? Basically, that's a very common way it comes in too. Um, Problems involving grandchildren, right? It's much more common these days that a grandparent is caring for a grandchild, but grandchildren are not covered persons on the plan, right? Unless you've got a guardianship over them and they're under age 18, then they could be. So, that's going to be an issue. Nieces, nephews, your boo, your significant other, right? That's not on the plan, doesn't live with you, having a problem, and you want to call and get some advice for them. So, this is really, really common thing that comes up. Karen or Noemi, do you have any elaboration on this one?
No, I do not at this time.
Okay. So I think that's pretty easy to understand how that could really come up. The mom's problem, your 28-year-old child's problem is not a problem that it's not a personal legal issue to you, right? They're not the benefits of the membership don't flow to those other people, and their problems aren't your personal legal issue. I mean, you might have a personal stake in the outcome of it, meaning you would feel terrible if your son got arrested, or you don't want your mom to get cheated, but it's not a personal legal issue. If that cheating happens, it doesn't affect you. There's no harm to you. It's not going to cost you money or anything like that, right? Your child gets arrested. That sucks for them. You're going to feel bad about it, but you're not getting arrested, right? You're not going to jail. Your liberty isn't at stake in that situation. So it's not a personal legal issue to you, right? And the benefits of the plan don't flow to them. Okay. Another one very frequently comes up. The member is an appointed agent for some other person, and they want to get legal advice for that other person, right? So it happens under powers of attorney. I have power of attorney for my mother, and she needs XYZ or something else, right? I'd like to use my membership for that. Membership doesn't cover that, right? Because mom isn't a covered person under the plan, right? And your power of attorney doesn't change that. It doesn't change your mom's legal problems into your legal problems, right? You could call and ask questions about what your job is as a power of attorney, like what you should be doing. You could call in to say that what are the things that I shouldn't do or should I avoid doing if I'm a power of attorney for somebody. How can I avoid liability if I'm going to be power of attorney for somebody? Somebody's asked me to be power of attorney. What should I know so that it can help me make an informed decision about whether I say yes or no? That's a personal legal issue for you, but you can't project the benefits of your membership onto somebody else because you have power of attorney over them. And the same would hold true for an adult that you have a guardianship over, or a conservatorship, right? That's a term that isn't necessarily in Pennsylvania, but it's in other states. Michael Oher, right? That's very much in the news these days. Blindside, the Tuohy's had a ship over him. He was over age 18. Whenever they got that, if they're a LegalShield member, they might be calling in to say, should we be doing something should we sign this contract for Michael Oher? We're his conservators. That's really not something that the plan is intended to cover.
Mike, if I could just say one thing, what would be covered under that though is if your parent was a member of LegalShield or is a member of LegalShield and you have a power of attorney over them, then you could call in on their membership, utilize the power of attorney. We would ask for a copy, and then you would be able to get services for them.
Right, because the benefit you're calling for a covered person, right? They have a membership, and you're authorized to talk on their behalf about their legal problems that are covered under their membership. So that's very different, right? Because the benefits are flowing to a person who is a member. All right, let's talk about the next one. Business related matters, also very common, and I'm talking about this in the context of a family membership, right? Of a personal membership plan, not one of the business plans. It is very common for folks to call in saying, I've got a business related issue, or I'm a member of a partnership and we have a partnership dispute, or there's some legal issue relating to my partnership itself, right? Uh, Somebody wants to dissolve it. Can you give me advice about the partnership that I can use on behalf of the partnership? Or can you give me advice that I can use on behalf of my business, right? There really are no business related benefits to the plan. It's not a covered person under the plan, right? It's not listed in there. Your business is not somebody that's the benefits of the membership flow to. And relating to all of these things, I just want to make sure that I make clear that there are no benefits under the plan that would flow to these other people or their problems. That means the advice benefit, the consultation benefit, the document review, the letter writing, but it also means the discounted services, right? That would also mean a referral. So those are only benefits that the covered person is entitled to. People who are not covered by the plan don't get any of the benefits of the plan. So you can't call in and say, I want a referral for my son, 28-year-old son, who's been arrested. He's not covered under the plan. The provider may, as a courtesy, say, I'll try to connect you with a lawyer that you could talk to hire on behalf of your son as a courtesy, right? But the provider would certainly be within their rights from a membership benefit standpoint to say, I can't even make a referral for you, right? Because your son's not entitled to those benefits. I can't refer you to somebody. Or you're not going to get a discount. The attorney is not going to extend you a discount because the discount only flows to people who are members, not to non-members, right? You can't extend that to somebody else. So I wanted to make sure that that's general comment regarding all of these situations, right? That the referral and the 25% discount do not apply to non-members, don't apply to other people's problems, right? Probate and trust issues. I see these on sitting waiting for requests almost every day, where a member says, I am the executor of so-and-so's estate, and something has come up and I want some help with it, right? Really, you're looking for advice, legal advice for the estate, right? Whenever there's an estate and the executor hires the attorney is representing either the executor in their capacity as the executor or the estate, right? They're providing services in service of the furtherance of the handling of the estate, right? That is not a personal legal issue for the executor, right? Now, the executor could call in and say, can I pay myself a commission without getting court approval as the executor? That's a personal legal issue to them because they could be held liable, right? So you can see how it's kind of slippery. But if they're saying, how do I sell the property, in this estate? You're really asking for legal advice on behalf of the estate. What do you need to do? What are the steps that you have to take? What types of approvals are necessary in order to carry out this task on behalf of the estate? Very, very common. I saw a couple folks that had questions like this just today, waiting for calls, and it's difficult for them to understand that this is not their personal legal issue. It's not really something that's covered by their membership. Same thing if you're a trustee of a trust of some kind, unless it's your own living trust, that would be different because those are really your assets that you control. But let's say you're a trustee administering a trust for the benefit of some other person, right? Again, that is not your personal legal issue. You really are not entitled to get advice on behalf of the trust. That is not something that's covered by your plan. The trust itself is not covered under your plan. Again, unless it's your own revocable living trust that's, you're the trustee and the beneficiary of that. Those are your assets for all intents and purposes under the law. That would be different. But if you're a trustee for somebody else, right, then that's not something that you can get legal advice for unless it's about your own personal liability. Somebody is accusing me of stealing money out of the estate. Can I be liable for that? I did take some money out of there, or I paid myself a commission, or I advanced myself something out of the estate. Do I have personal liability for that type of a thing? That's something that we can answer because that's your own personal issue. Karen, you unmuted, so I assume that you've got a comment about that.
Well, I think it's just important, especially with the probate and estate issues, is that a lot of times they think that they are getting an attorney for themselves whenever they're acting as the executor, and even going that far, they need to make sure they understand that they're looking to actually get an attorney for the estate. That is actually the main thing. Because a lot of times they're calling in and they're looking sometimes for an attorney, but they have to understand that they're not the ones actually trying to get an attorney for themselves. They're actually trying to find something on behalf of the estate. So that would not then fall under the membership because the estate itself is not under and the person that was subject to that is not a member for us to be able to do that type of referral for.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It's again, people don't have a good understanding of this. Oftentimes we have to explain, we'll probably answer some basic questions about it, but beyond that, right? We really aren't able to assist the member. If they want to retain somebody, we'll probably connect them with somebody as a courtesy to them. We really do try to help, and that's just not me. I'm sure that all of the provider firms in the entire country do that. As a courtesy, everybody is very, very service oriented, but some folks, right, are going to want to call back repeatedly as things progress with the estate so they can get instructions sort of every step of the way about what they need to do to carry out their obligations and their responsibilities as the executor of the estate. What are the deadlines? When do I have to do things? What are the taxes that have to be paid on behalf of the state? How do I handle this asset? When do I have to file something? Can you give me the forms? How can you help me fill them out? I filled them out partially. Can you look at them for me to tell me whether they're okay? Those are all questions that we've received from members about estates or trusts that would be other people's problems that are not covered by the membership, not covered by the membership. So, okay, let's move on to the next one. Immigration status of family members, especially family members that are not in the United States, right? This is also one that I do see in the hopper for a return call frequently. Noemi, and I know you had mentioned that you're seeing these types. Do you have any comments on these?
We do see a lot of intakes more recently, checking on how they can assist a family member with their green card status, things like that. Parents, sisters,
90-day
brothers.
fiance situations. We see that, right?
Yes.
If you're familiar with that show, and I know you all are, admit it.
We'll have to admit it is a guilty pleasure of mine.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah, no. So we see a lot of calls about that on the screen.
Right. Your 90-day fiance that's in Colombia is not covered by your membership. They're not a covered person. You cannot call us to say, I'd like some advice about what I need to do in order to bring my fiance over to the United States and all that kind of stuff. That's just not something that's covered under the membership. So again, very common misunderstanding. Want to bring my brother, want to bring my family, over, that kind of a thing.
Many times the member thinks that because they're looking to be the sponsor, that they want to know what they have to do as a sponsor, but what they don't understand is that everything gets triggered from the other person's side for them to be that sponsor.
Right. Yeah. They're not in control of it. Right. Yeah.
Correct.
And that's the 90-day fiance situation. They're the sponsor. So, okay. Legal issues for member affiliated organizations. This is another relatively common situation that folks call us about. A pastor calls us about a problem with their church, right? Not that they're in trouble with their church, but I'd like to cancel the copier contract with the church. What do I do about that? I've got somebody who wants to rent space in my church. Can you look at the lease agreement for me? The types of things, examples. Somebody is a board member on a homeowner association and they've got some type of issue involving a homeowner in the community and they want to know how to handle it, right? As a board on behalf of the association, we receive this complaint, or somebody is asking for tax returns for the homeowner association for the last 6 years. Do I have to provide those to them? Those types of questions. Really, you're asking that's the legal issue of the church. That's the legal issue of the homeowners association. Because you're on the board of a nonprofit, you can't use your membership to ask legal questions that will benefit, that are really the legal issues of the organization itself, right? That's a very, very common thing that I do see out there. Karen or Noemi, any comment on that? No.
We do have that.
Okay.
We do a lot with the non people trying to inquire regarding nonprofits. Is a very common thing. They don't seem to understand that the nonprofits being controlled by a board and by bylaws, that we can't specifically give him advice as to how that organization is supposed to act without acting on behalf of the entire board and organization. They just feel like that if they want to be able to do something as that individual board member, that they should be able to kind of take action. But it's there's so much more responsibility, and it's beyond what we can provide for them.
Yeah. We get folks who want to form a nonprofit, right? Or form a foundation of some kind, or they would like us to review their application for tax exemption with the IRS that they want to file on behalf of their nonprofit organization or foundation. Those are not personal legal issues for the member. Those are all issues that are in order to the benefit of the foundation, of the nonprofit entity, of one kind or another. Those just are not personal legal issues, and they're not covered by the plan. Now, if somebody says, I want to form a nonprofit corporation, or I would like some assistance, and they want to retain somebody to do it, oftentimes we will, as a courtesy to them, connect them with somebody who works in that field. And sometimes it's an accountant, like we know accountants, and we might connect them with somebody, again, as a courtesy to try to help them with the situation. But that is not something that is covered by their membership. We don't look at applications for tax exemption uh, forms, or we don't look at their articles of incorporation for a nonprofit entity, or that we put it together for them. That is not something that is covered by the membership, because it's not their personal legal issue. They don't really own the entity, right? The public owns it, right? That's why it's a nonprofit. It's basically public ownership, subject to regulation, oftentimes by the Attorney General or the Bureau of Charitable Affairs, or whatever their corresponding office is in their various states. They're public entities. That's why they're nonprofits. That's why they're oftentimes tax exempt. So they really can't possibly be have issues that are personal to the member, right? Even though it's a personal effort by the member, it's not their personal legal issue. They don't have any rights necessarily in those organizations because they're nonprofits. I've talked about this a little bit before, but legal issues relating to jointly owned property, right? Very common, right? I inherited property from my brother, and I inherited property from, I saw this one today. My sister, brother, and I inherited property from our parents, and we want our sister to buy us out of the property, and she won't. What do we do? Right? That's sort of your legal issue, but it's also somebody else's legal issue. You've got that mix in there. And it's difficult for us necessarily to give advice, because you're going to maybe take that advice, call your brother and say, this is what we need to do. I talked to my lawyer, and that brother might think that we're representing both you and your brother. In fact, we're really not. We don't represent the brother. He's not our client. He's not a member. He's not entitled to benefits. So that's a difficult thing for us to deal with. Same thing with, joint bank accounts. There could definitely be a conflict of interest as it relates to a joint bank account, or jointly owned car, or any of those types of things. They're just very complicated situations for us that necessarily involve legal advice that will benefit a non-covered person. So we're going to be a little bit careful about what exactly that we can do in these situations. But again, just a word to the wise that there's going to be touchy. They're not all going to be covered. Karen or Noemi, do you have any thoughts about that one at all? This again, this is not uncommon at all.
No, nothing.
No, you covered everything.
Okay. Multi-party lawsuits, right? So a lawsuit involving a covered person plus one or more non-covered persons or their business that are also named as litigants in the lawsuit. Case in point, just had somebody call us about a lawsuit that they're named as a defendant, but their spouse who's not on the membership, a child, a friend, and a couple of their businesses, none of which are covered by the membership. That's a problem for us. We can talk to the person about their individual liability, on the case. But we have to be very careful because a lot of those folks are similarly situated, and the person, if they own all the businesses, is going to really not perceive there to be a significant difference between their stake in the litigation and their business's stake in the litigation. For them, it's like all one pot. But from our standpoint, it really isn't, because number one, there's only one member we're talking to. None of these other people were members, right? None of these other people are entitled to any of the benefits under the plan, such as trial defense benefits or a referral or a discount on services from a referral lawyer, right? So when a member doesn't perceive a difference between themselves personally and these other parties involved in the case that are not members and are not entitled to benefits, they are going to expect that everything's covered and that they're all entitled to benefits, even though they aren't. And so if we send them to a referral lawyer and the referral lawyer is willing to maybe engage in joint representation, they can't always do that. There might be conflicts of interest, or people have to waive conflicts of interest there, right? But they may not extend a discount under their services to those folks. And the member might say, why am I not getting a discount? That kind of a thing. So this is also a difficult problem. And it's really not unusual at all when somebody gets sued, they get sued and their business gets sued, right? Or family members might get sued because they're all sort of involved in whatever the endeavor is. Maybe they're all um, owners of a piece of property, right? That are being subject to a foreclosure um, because mom left you this property, but she also put a mortgage on it that she didn't pay. And so now you're kind of stuck with this foreclosure case on a property that you're have an ownership interest in, but you never signed the promissory note, and you want some type of um, benefits as it relates to that. So that's another um, one that we do see. All right, so those are the things that we wanted to talk about.